lot better.
Judy's not on yet, right? No.
No, and I think Steve is. I think it's Chris. I don't know if Steve's on yet.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, so we're waiting for Chris to get back on too.
Judy and then wait for Chris.
Is that Steve or Chris?
I'm here.
Okay, Chris, we don't have.
Steve, can you check on Chris?
In the bathroom. I'm not going in there.
Well, then you could have just told us that. We're waiting for her to get back on.
Right, I told him. Come in.
Thank you, Steve.
Here she is. Hi, Chris. Oh, she's still connecting.
Okay, I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Loud and clear.
All right, wonderful.
Okay.
Okay, Chris, do you want to take a roll call for the budget meeting? And then we'll get started into the.
Keith,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Here.
Nelson,
Here.
Randolph,
Here.
Stewart,
Here.
Jennifer Mooney, CFO.
Here.
Okay, we're all here.
Excellent. Thank you. Just wanted to document that. Jen, I don't know if you want to get started. You had sent out a memo with some of the changes. So I don't know if you want to go over those sheets or if people are comfortable. I don't know if anybody needs explanation or if people reviewed the changes to the sheets. So we don't have to take the time to do that. If people are comfortable with it, you tell me what your feedback is as committee members.
There were a lot of changes, Paul, when I went through the first review of the newest preliminary.
Mhm.
So I think, fairness to Jen, there was stuff that was not in the first sheet. A lot of numbers had to get corrected, and it'll go a lot quicker, I'm sure. But there's probably going to be a few points as they're thumbing through the pages that they'll have their questions, and I may have
Is that the-
as well.
Was that number 3, the preliminary budget 3 you're talking about from the first one, right? Or
Yeah, we had the first preliminary that went out. Then there was a quick revision that Jen had just pretty much before the day was out.
Yeah, I got like 3 revisions. That's why I want to make sure I have the right one up here. That's all.
Third one came out today.
Yeah,
Yes. Today's bill. Okay, very good.
So
3:15.
let's then, Jen, I guess address I have the list of pages, but address the pages that were changed, and we'll start from there.
Okay, so to start off, I had to change sheet 4. I did not have the realized in cash in 2021 total number in there. Since then, with doing the overall budget, I had to increase the surplus that we're using to 435,000 to stay within our levy cap limit. So so I made that, so that was one change. Sheet 5, this was with the latest update, number 3. With speaking with the auditors, I had to add a line called the Garden State Preservation Trust 2021 excess. That is because we anticipated 55, 15, and 21. We received 84.93. So I have to put that excess as anticipated revenue in 22. It's usually a flat amount every year. It never changes, but so that was an oddity.
So Jen, those combined will equal that 8493.
Correct.
Okay.
7 stayed the same. So sheet 9. What I had to do with that is we received our recycling tonnage grant since the last workshop, so I added that in. The alcohol education grant, I had to move that from 2021 to 2022 because I overlooked that with doing a chapter 159 on that. So that had to be a 2022 anticipated. And I moved out of sheet 9 to sheet 10, the American Rescue Plan Act. The auditors had said to move it to that sheet since we're going to use that to offset capital, some capital expenses, which I don't know if we can talk about that now or when we get to capital, whichever you guys, if anybody has any questions.
Actually, it sounds more like good news, correct? I mean, these are
is.
realized revenue.
It is,
Yeah.
yeah. But it's like, we don't want to, the only downside to it is you don't want to get comfortable with having, it's $403,000. So
Oh, yeah.
we need to realize going forward, we're not going to have $403,000.
Yep.
Is there any regulations as to what we can put that towards?
There are, with speaking with the auditors, capital expenses is an option. We can use that when I report that. I have to report it by the end of April. By April 30th, I have to report an expenditure, which I don't think we'll have any, but we can use that to offset for the road projects and the trucks. And that's on sheet 26.
Yeah, Paul, the thing about these types of grants is that, yes, it is limited as to what we can spend it on. I mean, I got something similar to this for my business called the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. And you don't want to completely count on it. If all of your I's
Right.
aren't dotted, T's crossed, Jen, you can attest, we could
Yeah.
potentially would have to pay it back.
Correct.
Well, and that's what I was saying. I knew there were certain
Your
strings
laurels.
attached to how it could be spent in regards to these funds. I just wanted to make sure, like you said, we didn't do it improperly and then end up being on the hook for having to pay it back.
Mm-hmm.
And the benefit, I think, to putting it on this page and then attributing it to capital is, one, capital is a pretty clear cut use. And two, if we do have to pay it back, it's cleaner to do it this way than to be pulling from the, what I would consider the operating budget.
I agree. That's
Fair
what,
enough.
So John, we can keep going. We can discuss capital when we get to it. I think
Okay.
we all understand what the ARPA funds are.
Okay. Sheet 11, it was just total updating. With that. Sheet 12, I added the 2 line items for administrator salary and other expenses. Sheet 13 was the same. Sheet 14, I reduced the planning board salary, adjusted that down to 25,000. Sheet 15, I reduced the other expenses down to the 1,000 That's, the rest stayed the same. So sheet 15A. I broke out the solid waste and recycling. Snow removal went down to 50,000. And salary and wages, and they're operating, I believe. Yes, so they were both reduced from the original by a little bit. So looking at that, sheet 15B. I know we talked about doing the parks, the other expenses, taking that all out of open space. However, when I did the temporary budget, I had included $3,900 in the temporary budget. So we've already spent some against there, and I need to leave that 3,900 in there.
Makes sense.
So that was 15B, 15. It was the same. 17A, that was just page total update. Sheet 18. What I had to do with that, because that chapter 159 wasn't done for the alcohol grant, it created an over expenditure of the grant, so we need to just raise that in the budget. So it's $160.75. That's on sheet 18. Sheet 19 was just a page update. 22 is the same. 24. Sheet 24 was just adding in the appropriation for the recycling grant and the alcohol education grant. 25 is just a page total update. Sheet 26, we reduced the DPW trucks from 439,000 down to the 235. So I don't know, Paul, if you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, Carl, at the last meeting, it seemed like we were in agreement to replace one of the large dump trucks and then provide a smaller, I'm going to call it a service truck to the DPW. And we discussed whether it needed a plow and whether it's a 150 or 250. Carl went out and got the quotes, and there's, I think, a $400 difference between a 150 and a 250, and the availability of the 250 was pretty immediate. So I think that made sense. And then the larger dump truck is about 190 for the cab and chassis, and then sending it back out to be retrofitted. So we are planning on selling. Carl and I discussed today. I'll be helping him out. Previously, the administrator would handle this, but getting the trucks on gov deals. So I'll be working with him on that and handling that. I've done it before for the township. So.
Well, as I recall on the pickup truck part, Carl was going to look at an SUV since he wasn't going to be using the truck for truck-like purposes, wasn't planning on plowing with it or using it for salting. So that's what the back and forth was with Steve and Carl just hashing it out. The original was it 30,000 was a ballpark, and then the number kept creeping up. So I missed something in that dialogue there as far as.
Yeah, I guess I missed the SUV too. I thought it was just a 150 versus 250 and plow or no plow. So the SUV is something, I don't remember the SUV.
Because of what the intended purpose was.
I thought when the SUV was brought up, we were saying that things get thrown in the back and it's just easier to have the pickup truck.
Right, and the 150 was also a possibility too. So
Yeah,
that
I thought we had talked about that as well.
Yeah, the 150 was just as expensive as the 250 and has no availability currently.
Nothing.
So I'd rather have a 250 for $400 more and know that's going to last than a 150 and also have to wait 8+ months for the truck.
Carl, what do you say?
I would, like Paul did mention, the 150s they're not even making them yet. So we don't even have a timeline of when they're gonna even start. The 250s they're making now, what I got from the salesman, and he can grab one, as soon as we can get the PO to him. But other than that, I mean, it's up to you, whatever you decide. I mean, a pickup would do a lot better than a SUV because of throwing stuff in the back. It'd be so much easier,
Especially if you just have to pick up a couple cones, you're driving around that were put for a minor closure rather than, I think it makes it a lot easier, more sense going with the pickup.
Right.
We have 3 of those now in my job we use because they're great to go out there for that kind of stuff.
Especially, when we have to go out and pick up a dead deer or something, it's tough trying to throw a dead deer in the back of a 550.
I understand all
know.
of it, but as I was talking to Jen today, it comes down to what the public can afford, and I realize, hey, the costs are going up for everybody. Nobody's escaping this chaos on the world stage. It comes back to the local level. But if this budget is positioning itself where we've got to raise taxes, well, then the things that are discretionary, even though they're a good idea, and if we had the money or eventually we have the money, it makes sense to get them for exactly those reasons. But at the end of the day, if we're going to be hitting the pockets of the public, then the things that we could live without because we've been getting by, we've made it so far, and not to stay in always that survival mode or getting by mode, it'd be good to get ahead of the curve. I agree with that. Trucks aren't going to get cheaper next year. Who knows what they'll cost? So we're going to face the same dilemma. However, what's the ultimate hit on the public? And out of the priorities, it seems that the big trucks take the real beating. I'm not misunderstanding that from talking to Carl. And they're not necessarily made for long-term use. They're done in 10 years. So about when you're done paying them off, if you borrow to pay for them, they're shot. So if we've got to get a truck, the big truck sounds like the workhorse, keeping the roads clear, the projects and everything else that's going on. Pickup truck is still a luxury item in my book when it comes to what can the public afford.
Jen, is there a limit on the CARES money, the ARPA money, whatever we want to call it, that we have? It's almost like a Brewster's Millions kind of scenario. I think we have to spend it within some time.
We do. We have to have it by 2024.
Mm-hmm.
We have to have it encumbered or, the funds designated for
Yeah.
something by 2024. And I believe we have to have it paid for by 26.
And I think the reality is last year's tax increase was larger than what's proposed this year. And that included purchasing a dump truck that in my opinion, was not sufficient. I know Carl was happy to see any dump truck, but I think this is a prudent expenditure of funds this year with a lower tax increase than what was approved last year.
Listen, our DPW is like our shining star pretty much in our town. I can't see why the difference going with the pickup truck, not getting the pickup truck. If it's going to help out our town, it's going to help out Carl, it's going to help out the guys, where they may be taking less work off one of the larger trucks, having to go around. You have the smaller truck, it's easier for them to access, easier on gas. The whole round, I'm not seeing why there should be too much of an issue, especially if we can get some of that covered under this CARES Act funds.
Exactly.
It's not going to cost the public anything.
I mean, if you want, you could wait. I really don't. I put it in. It would very come in handy, but
So,
I understand that people on taxes nowadays. It's tough, and
So you were renting a truck last year, so I think it's something that would be beneficial and used quite a bit. I mean, that van you had was not sufficient, but we took it because we were being respectful of taxpayers when we took it from the Board
That
of
was
Ed.
a senior van, wasn't it originally?
It
or
was
something like that?
it was from the Board of
School
Ed.
bus.
Yeah, that was at the Board of
Yeah,
Ed.
and but it got a lot of use and it put in its
It
time,
did.
and I think that this would be a better vehicle and be used quite a bit and make your life.
Personally, I
and
think
the
if we
others
were
that
to
work with you
wait,
easier.
it's gonna be more expensive next year if we wait, and we'll be having the same discussion then.
Yeah, and we have the allotted, the CARES money. I guess I keep going back to that. Maybe I shouldn't, but I think that
Right.
that's a prudent point.
I mean, you don't want to treat that either as just a spending spree and spend that down,
Right.
but if we take, what was the cost of the pickup again? 30,000? I'm going, I lost my sheet here.
I
so-
think it was 34. I'm not
34.
sure.
I think it was like
I don't have the
34,
paperwork in
34,
front of
1.
me.
And that was for F-250?
Yes.
Yeah,
Christ, you can't even touch used pickup trucks for under 40,000 these days, so, I mean.
The whole point of the
Carl,
workshop,
Steve.
shape the trade and make us find where the money can come from and not hit the public. If that CARES Act, if it's appropriate, it's got very low risk that they'll say that we use the money inappropriately. How long you figure we get the lifespan of that F-250 with the guys take care of it, Carl?
Well, you figure it won't be in the salt, it won't be plowing or salting, so it should be, I would say 20 years anyways.
Are we going diesel? Is that diesel?
Nah, it's gas.
Yeah,
Yes.
I guess I wouldn't go with the diesel or the 250 in today's world.
Right, that's, I mean, I'm just guessing.
Both cost and durability. They're not what they were.
The difference are,
light duty
okay.
truck.
Right.
Listen,
So we can do this with town money and we're getting 20 years out of it. So it's not something that's going to resurface and tap into our operating budget, which is a little more sensitive to the whims of the economy. I don't have to be have my arm twisted too hard. Steve, how are you doing on this?
Hang on, I got a question for Carl. Yes, Carl.
Good.
All right, the 235 I'm looking at, that's gonna cover the new dump truck, cab and chassis, then you said it has to be fitted with the bed, right, the dump?
Right.
Then we gotta put a plow on it. What does all that come to?
That's
That come
the
to
whole truck.
235 or under?
No, the whole truck with the cab, chassis, body, everything to us probably would come in close to 195, 200 right now. It could even be
Okay,
cheaper.
Then you need a plow.
No. I got a plow from, I could take off one of the trucks that were, putting on gov deals.
Okay, so basically 200,000 covers us a truck, we have a plow, and that leaves us with 35 with, that would be used for the pickup truck, correct?
Right.
Okay. But does that entail raising taxes then?
Well, the budget,
I
the
don't know.
taxes were raised more last year, Steve, than what this budget
Right, but
presents.
are we still gonna raise taxes
Yes.
just to get this pickup?
No, not to get the truck. We're gonna raise taxes because it's the prudent path and we're being responsible for future years. Problem with politicians is they look at their budget for the 1 year and not realize that these budgets impact the years down the road. So sometimes a tax increase is needed so that we don't see a 4 or 5 cent tax spike down the road. If we're gonna stay on the path to keep paying off debt, this keeps the balance, the budget smooth and respectful of the taxpayers. They're not gonna see a spike in taxes down the road.
What's your proposed tax hike this year?
Less than 2.5 cents per hundred on the average house. It's $81.60 for the year.
That extra money is gonna pay for what now? Can you break that down? Why no?
Everything that's on page, the 32 pages or whatever's in front of you.
All right, maybe a better question. Jen and I, again, we kicked this around today. So Jen, we raised the taxes and we know that there's a percentage, but percentages get an emotional response from people because they don't have anything to match it up to. As Paul just pointed out, a real dollar amount on the mean average of the house, I think is around 350. What would be the expected total revenue that any increase would give us to work with? Like what's, at the end of the day, what are we actually bumping the budget revenue side by?
The revenue side?
Right, because if we're, when we were talking today, it translated to how many pennies it was, and a penny increase in tax based on home value comes out to like $52,000. So if we're looking at what our increase is going to be, we also need to see, well, what is the total return on that increase if everything stays the same? The houses, house values, the mean average.
Well,
You're about $152,000 on this budget.
Quick
Every
question.
if every penny is 52,000, you're not at a full half penny, so you're about 152,000.
This budget, we were going over everything, we're discussing how there is also gonna be a little percentage of an increase. But this budget, that's also covering this rather large payout we had from last year that's involved in this budget. Isn't that one of the reasons too, where we're at, why we're at where we're at?
It impacts the budget because the surplus was used last year to pay that too.
And we're paying more of it again this year, where that money could have been used for bettering of the town.
well, we're not so much,
I'm just asking.
we have to have it budgeted. So we
Okay.
do, when you do an emergency appropriation,
Right,
we paid for that last year. We used the surplus.
right.
We paid it ourselves, but we have to raise that as an appropriation in this year's budget.
Okay.
So even though it's not getting paid out this year, it has to be put in the budget.
Okay.
So it's a line item that may not actually be drawn on. So at the end of the year,
It might still be there.
It was there, but then nothing encumbered on it. So it shows up as the value that it was.
Right, because we've already paid out on it, so we cannot draw down on that. It's,
Yeah, okay.
Further,
I'm slowly trying to study through the whole budget thing. I just want to see, does that mean at the end of this year, since we're actually not paying that, we've already paid that, is there gonna be an extra surplus sitting in the budget from what we had this year? And
Yeah.
is that actual, money that's there, or is that just like,
right,
we
so
paid-
we're
it's just
paying
more for the
ourselves,
little space
Yeah.
on the budget line?
yeah, we're paying ourselves back.
It's a
Okay.
replenishment.
All right. Okay, thank you, sorry.
right, for
It's a good question.
everybody, you want to break down last year's taxes. When we have the open space, it's a separate tax from our municipal budget. And that's how we collect it. It goes into that open space fund, which we're using for very prudently, by the way. I'm appreciative of that, and I know the public is, because they get a little edgy when they see us going into that fairly decent size. Well, if you look at the bills list, that's rapidly approaching $600,000 that sits there. Well, when you have a dedicated amount of tax going into that account, whatever that number is, there's a minimum that we have to, as long as we have that account and we maintain it. But we don't have to keep the full amount of the tax that are going in. So Paul pointed out a penny equals 52,000. If we get a few more ratables, or we get property values go up, or revaluations, then that jumps a little bit. So as an example, if our minimum for the open space that we have to fund that account was 2 cents, gives us $104,000 based on what the value is. And we're currently feeding that account at 4 cents, then that's another $104,000 going into that open space account. So if you take that 2 cents that was dedicated to the open space, and we drop down to our minimum requirement of 2 cents, the other 2 cents, because we were feeding that account at 4 cents, that other 2 cents can be brought over to the municipal budget. yes, it looks like a tax increase, but in the pockets of the resident, the number that they see ends up being the same because they were paying both accounts. So we're allowed to reposition to a certain extent how we're going to fund the open space account, as long as we respect the minimum, and then reposition that money. So while we can say that we raise taxes on the municipal side or on the open space side, we don't necessarily hit the public for an extra dime. So
That was my theory when I reduced it to the minimum, and then Walt raised it, and then you put it back down again to where I had it.
And
So I
that's
think
the
we're at 2 cents right now.
Yeah, I think we're at the minute, and that's the beauty of it, Paul, because when we have a need on the municipal side, we don't have to hit the public first when we're looking at the different accounts that we have. When the account got drained down because we paid for the playground equipment, 200,000, we paid
It
for.
was never drained down. It always was the same level, and
No.
it was, I did the same thing, and now you're agreeing with me when you disagreed with me. So it's just, and it doesn't make sense because we're already at the 2 cents. I don't know where you're going with it.
Please.
I'm just trying to.
If the tax is at 2 cents, where are you going to reduce it, Art?
No, I'm saying, Paul, when you say the taxes are increased, when we repositioned the taxes last year from the open space, yes, it would look like an increase to the public on paper for the municipal budget, but we also lowered what we were taking out of their pocket for the open space.
You put it back where I had it because you raised it the year before.
Paul, you're interrupting. I'm not.
You're just
interrupting.
wasting time.
I
And you
know
sound like a
it-
politician. You're here for the annual budget for yourself, and that's it.
Seriously? You want to go there? Come on. Paul, Mr. Lenz, Paul, because there's two Pauls here. I don't need an echo.
Mhm.
I'm asking the questions. I'm explaining something because the rocks are being thrown. I don't want the rocks thrown. I'm looking out for the public. I was looking out for them last year. And whether I'm on the committee or not next year, I'm still going to be looking out for the public. So just leave that on the side, Paul. I'm raising the issue so it's not looking like we're taxing the public for the sake of going more into their pocket.
I think we're saying the same thing, and you're trying to start a fight.
That's not the case.
Let's just stop it there. I understand what's going on before this turns into something which it shouldn't need to turn into. I didn't mean to try to get cumbering into anything off the track. Quick question. So if we're doing the minimum tax into the open space, and if it's raised or gets lowered, that's money that's going to the open space fund, correct?
Correct.
And that's money, and that open space fund is limited as to what we can spend it for.
Yep.
As compared to if we didn't raise that tax there and, it kind of got shifted now to the public, that money there can be used for a little more leeway, correct?
Yep.
Municipal, okay.
So as a good example.
Kind of using this as a self-learning tool here for you guys, so thank you.
Right. No, a good example for that would be, we've got the recreation grant. It's 60,000. I've been working with Tom and Jen on how to make it fit. And one place that we can pull money for the improvements to the park is from that open space. If the grant process requires us to pay for the project first, and when we have the bills that show that we actually did the project and it is completely compliant with what we applied for, then that 60,000 would come back to the town, and we could put that 60,000, as I understand it, into the open space account where it came from. So it's a using that account for that dedicated purpose for the parks function, and then restoring that money once the grant criteria have been qualified, as opposed to finding the grant money up front in the general budget and then waiting for the grant to be satisfied, and then we're receiving the checks. If I got that right, Jen?
That's my understanding, yes.
So it sounds like
Why would we spend any of the money before we get the grant itself?
I believe it's a
I
reimbursable
think it's a
grant.
reimbursement grant.
Reimbursable grant, okay. Then I don't understand.
I'm joking. All right,
Okay,
let's move on, or let's move.
Okay. Jen, you can carry on to page 27.
Okay. So, sheet 27, we reduced the bond anticipation note payment down to the 160,000.
That was still keeping us on track to pay off as we had been in the past.
Correct.
Yeah.
27A was just a page total update. As are 28, 29, and 30 are just total updates, page total updates. And that's it. For the changes. So I don't know if you guys have any questions or what.
So our total tax increase, Jen, is going to be, just for notes purposes, for explanation to the public, when they get their bill increase. It's gonna be what, about $86 on the average?
81,
month of the year?
$81.60 on the average assessed home, which is at $355 this year for Bethlehem Township. It's a little less than 2.5 cents per 100 valuation.
Right, and for the
That gives
municipal
us about
budget, I remember it was
150,000.
out- I'm sorry, Steve, go ahead.
Yeah,
Quick question, that gives us about $150,000 by the increase of the taxes. Am I getting that correct?
That's about the value of that tax increase, yes.
30 is going for the pickup truck, was I'm assuming, then where is the other 120 just dispersed by all the other things we need the money for?
Most of it is dispersed in the operating budget. The pickup truck is actually coming, if we're going dollars for dollars, it's coming from that ARPA money that was assigned from the federal government.
that's the
So
American
that
Rescue
leads
money
me
talking
to believe
about,
that we're getting $150,000 to cover things else in the budget.
Well, we're using less surplus in the past years because it's not regenerating as quickly. So last year we used $750,000 in surplus, plus a 2.5 cent tax increase on the municipal budget, with acknowledging, so Art knows, with acknowledging a 1 cent decrease in open space. But this year we're only using $435,000 of our savings versus $750,000 of our savings.
okay, makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. When I see it written out.
And Jen,
Yep.
on going back to just a quick page 4, I know that it was pretty startling for everybody on that 08-113, the anticipated interest,
Oh, yeah.
because that's a train wreck at the federal level. So pretty much any money that we have in the account, we can look into the future here, this budget and then future budgets, that there won't be any interest really in the foreseeable future unless things change at the federal level.
Yeah, I mean, we got $103 last year. So
That's crazy. Crazy stuff. All right. Because I know you looked at that and you were just so surprised, and we talked about it later.
yeah. I know, I
Seeing
had to
that-
double check that.
Yeah.
We should ask for a banking RFP at some point again, because when we had $3 million in surplus, we had a guaranteed floor of 4%. And so I don't think they'll give us a guaranteed floor with less than $1 million in surplus, but it's worth at least always rattling the cages and make sure that we're getting the best deal we can from our banks.
That's something you guys can,
Let's get through the budget first, because I know that's a big process. We did it last time to get that guaranteed floor. Yeah, are there any other questions about the budget? Okay, so this budget will be introduced April 7th, I believe is the date. This is our first meeting in April. And if there's no further discussion, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn, and we'll reconvene. The portal will open back up at 7:30 again, and the meeting will start at 7:45. So I can have a motion to adjourn.
Make that motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
excellent. Thank you